welcome back. This is tonight's edition of The Probe. Is the editor's take on press freedom in Ghana, and we are privileged to have a number of editors lined up tonight to join us for the discussion. And I have with me the GJA General Secretary Kofi Yeboah joining me via Zoom. We also have Samson Lardy, former GJA PAV and Journalist of the Year, and then also Erastus Asare Donko, an award-winning journalist, also will join us. We also have Martha Krensel Aqua, editor at Doom News. We also have Evans Mensah, senior editor, also head of our political desk at Joy News. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Probe. I see Martha. Martha, you're welcome.
Thank you, Anifa.
Thank you so much, at least on time. I think we have Mr. Kofi Yeboah also, the GJA General Secretary. Hello, Mr. Yeboah. Do we have Mr. Yeboah? Okay, you will have to unmute Mr. Yeboah, and then I'm told your video is also off, but we can manage if you can unmute now so we can hear you. Okay, so whilst we rectify that and also have Evans Mensah, Samson Lardy and Erastus Asare Donko also join us. Welcome once again, Martha. And I know that ladies are always on time, so once again, you're welcome, Martha. So let's start off whilst the gentlemen join us and rectify their Zoom and amongst others. Martha, what would you say is the current status of media in Ghana? We'll talk about press freedom shortly, but what will be your own general assessment when it comes to the media that we have as we speak?
Thank you very much, Amifa, and it's good to be here. I'm glad we have media, because without it, a lot of things will happen and will go unnoticed. We will not have anyone to hold duty bearers accountable, so it's good to have the media, but with the advent of social media now, it's becoming quite difficult to control what goes out there and how it goes out there. So for me, the plurality is helping. It's good to have it, but we have a lot more challenges on the media front because of so many issues I'm sure will come up later, because you have people who are, I won't call them untrained, but are operating away from the ethics and standards that you expect, and then that is actually clouding those who are doing what they have to do and how they have to do it. So you ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth following the standards and doing what you have to do and how you have to do it? So at some point it gets a bit frustrating, and then you also have the atmosphere being a bit tensed because there is so much going on, and the duty bearers are looking out for the media to do something, and then others are also waiting for the media to open up so that they can take them on. And I feel, this one I'm saying it reluctantly, the media is under threat in some aspects of our practice.
Okay.
And so
which aspects in particular, Martha, which aspects in particular is the media under threat, you'd say?
When it comes to venturing into the quote-unquote the dangerous zone. The dangerous zone, like I'm saying, like what the influencers or the powerful will not want you to see. When you want to bring it out, then you become the target. And that is my biggest fear, that when the watchdog becomes a target, it puts a lot of fear in what we do and how we do it. And so you ask yourself, should I continue or put my life on the line? Because you are not sure what will happen next. And you are not sure who to report to. Yes, we have regulatory bodies, but are they strong enough to protect you when you are under attack?
Okay.
Are they capable of rescuing you when you are being dragged in the mud by the powerful? And you weigh all those things, you look back and you look sideways, and it seems so uncertain, and you decide on it at that point. Should I go on or not go on? So that's the threat I see. Okay. And it's actually making people quail. Some of our colleagues quail. Those who are not afraid to take people on are now being a bit careful or extra careful. But I thought we could go all out and then help in building our nation. But at this point, I see some quailing because it is not very safe.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Yeboah. I'm told we have Samson and Evans also joining us now whilst we wait for them to settle. Mr. Yeboah, if you can hear me, earlier I didn't hear you because you hadn't unmuted. If you can hear me, I would want to find out from you when it comes to the current crop of leadership that we have at the Ghana Journalists Association. We've heard concerns being raised from how most of you were elected up until how you are fighting the cause for journalists or the media in general in this country. Would you say that people are unfairly attacking this crop of leadership that the GJA has? Really, what would you say is your own, track record? How would you rate yourself so far as a current crop of GJA, executives, you'd say?
Thank you very much. I don't know whether you can hear me now.
We can hear you, but a bit low. If you could amplify, but we can't see you, but we can hear you. We can manage.
Okay. Anyway, but just to go straight to the points you raised, I have not heard of the criticisms you are making reference to. If you may help me with the specifics, then I can address them well. Be that as it may. Mm-hmm. Okay, go on, please.
So I was asking first, maybe your own assessment of the current crop of leadership that we have at the Ghana Journalists Association. Then we can go into the criticisms that have come up in terms of how you are able to fight the cause for journalists in this country.
I think it will not be fair to mark my own scripts. I think I should leave that to the members of the association and the general public to do that. Be that as it may, we have been doing our best to address the concerns of members of the association. This new administration took office barely a year ago. It will be 1 year in June. At least over the past 10 months or so, we have been able to put a number of measures in place. We have launched what we call the Journalist Support Fund, which fund essentially is meant to address concerns like attacks against journalists and also to take care of retirees. So this is a big welfare initiative we have undertaken. Besides other interventions we have made so far, even less than 1 month.
So from where you stand, you'd say that you've been able to steer the course when it comes to fighting for journalists in this country. You'd say within this 1 year, you say that you've done creditably, you've performed creditably, you'd say.
If I may add, mm-hmm. you may recall when the issue of Adan Radio mm-hmm. came up, we had made a number of interventions, including sending a team to Adan, and I led that team to Adan on a fact-finding mission. Thereafter, we held a press conference to address the issue. If you may also recall, when the Oyepa, this is the Kumasi Traditional Council issue came up, we had also sent a team, a mission to Menchia, led by the president of the GJA. And so we have gone beyond the past interventions of just issuing press statement to going to the ground to engage with the stakeholders in our quest to address the issues.
Okay. Well, Samson Lardy Anyeneni joins us. Is the former GJA Journalist of the Year, and we're privileged to have you also joining us tonight. And like I said, Evans Mensah is also the head of our political desk, senior editor, joining us as well. But Samson, let me come to you on this. When it comes to your initial assessment of the media in this country, or the press as we put it, is it truly free?
Well, as far as the constitutional freedoms are concerned, as far as the legislative, constitutional and legislative framework undergirding the freedoms and independence that the media is supposed to enjoy are concerned, this country has one of the best as far as laws are concerned. Unfortunately, there is so much that has gone on, that is going on, that does not allow me to say, positively that those freedoms are being enjoyed and enabled to be enjoyed in the manner that both the Constitution and the other legislative provisions require. And I'm sure in the course of this discussion, we may go a bit more detail. I will begin by going straight to say that the use of the particular legislations that you have heard, we have all been concerned about, talking in particular reference to the Electronic Communications Act, the Section 76 of that Act, and talking also about the Criminal and Other Offences Act, Sections 207 and 208. They are pronounced use, particularly within this regime, leaves very much to be desired. And clearly, the developments, starting with the murder of Ms. Swale, going forward to the increased numbers of journalists that have been assaulted, particularly by security agencies, and the media foundations monitoring will show you the results that, and of course, confirmed by the University of Ghana Communications Department State of the Ghanaian Media Report 2023, that security agencies are the biggest violators of journalists' rights as far as their safety is concerned. If they are the ones who are supposed to procure and enable our safety, and they are the ones that are rather in the majority in violating the security and the rights of journalists, then it tells you that there is a lot that has to be done. So those will be my preliminary comments. As we go into the details, we'll share a lot more in this regard, and I'll be very forthright about how, particularly the commencement of the regime of the NPP, beginning with the crackdown on radio authorization licenses, shutting down radio stations, and so on and so forth, and pretending that, yes, they had violated, some of them had violated their obligations in terms of paying, renewing and paying certain fees and so on. The manner and the approach, high-handedness that was taken, clearly have all contributed to the present situation that we see. And whilst the NDC was accused of dishing out radio frequency licenses or television and radio frequency licenses as if they were toffees, clearly there has been and there was a clear intention to generate more frequency space so that political persons and politically exposed persons could benefit. And all of that has dealt quite a hefty blow on the industry as we speak, and that will be my last point as I end my first preliminary comment. As we speak, as far as setting fees that have to be paid by those who are operating electronically, television and so on, if they reveal to you what is going on, you'll be shocked. It's nothing but something that is set to cripple the industry a lot more.
Okay. Well, we've had the GJA, for instance, since you're talking about these laws, we know that in 2001 we repealed the criminal libel and sedition laws. But we've had the GJA at least 2 press conferences talk about the fact that there's a fear that these laws may be smuggled through the back door, bringing it back through the Communications Act that you've talked about in the Criminal Code. Do you get that sense as well that this is what is actually happening?
It's happening. It's not something I get a sense about. It's the reality.
Okay.
And you can immediately mention recent situations that have happened. The Radio Adas Noah Nadame. Mensa Thompson is not a journalist.
Okay.
But of course, these laws were used against him, Bobia and Sa, and I would begin by saying that a good number of some of the journalists, not a good number, some of the journalists or media persons who have been dealt with by some of these criminal provisions do a certain practice of media that I do not entirely subscribe to.
Okay.
A few of them are engaged in the height of the excesses. However, take Bobie Ansah, for example, he did his publication or radio work about the First Lady, and that the First Lady was involved in some land grabbing situation somewhere. The First Lady is not, so to speak, an employee of the state to start with. And even if she were, she is, like every individual, entitled to take civil suit against those who will do things that defame her.
Okay.
It was clearly something that you haven't heard the government or the presidency categorically speak about and denounce. So it means that they are in support of it. You don't use criminal law to arrest the journalist and suggest that he's creating fear and panic, or that he's involved in publication of false news, when the individual that his publication is about has every right to assert their right in the law court. The same thing regards to Mensa Thompson. Of course, he's not a journalist. Then you talk about Radio Adas Noah Dame.
Okay.
The same thing. McDan and his company are completely private individuals. The state has no business going to their rescue by seeking to help them, arresting a journalist, and a court denying them bail and treating them as if the journalist as if he's a flight risk. These are the things that have happened that appear to cower, some journalists, and they are worried to the extent that those who supervise the realm, from the presidency to the Ministry of Information, more particularly, that you don't hear them making the needed commentary and pronouncement denouncing some of these things. It tells you that they are tacitly in support of them, and this is completely wrong.
Well, but we've had the Information Ministry in this latest incident in the northern region, for instance, at least condemning. But I'll come back to you, Samson, on this. Let me bring in Erastus Asare-Donko also on this. Erastus, from where you stand, at least, you've done some extensive work when it comes to this. We're talking about press freedom, media freedom in general. Do you get the sense that Ghanaian journalists are facing a crackdown on free speech, or is it the case that as journalists, you're being irresponsible and failing to take the blame for it?
Well, for a moment, you might say that the press is free to do whatever they want to do in Ghana. Not until you start doing something that does not go directly in favor of authorities or government in court. And as glaring as what recently I did on illegal mining. And then you start getting the feedback that people really don't like you and they don't like what you do. And it makes you feel that you're not too free to do what you want to do. Even the acknowledgement in itself by the authorities that be of certain works you have done, which exposes the truth, which borders on national security, borders on our very existence. And you expect that government will put such a serious note to it, and then you get a sense that nobody wants to even see what you have done. They don't want to even acknowledge it. They don't want to, and you get a posture of some of people call you through certain people, and they tell you that they are not happy with what you have done, though it is the truth. They are not happy, and they are not happy with you.
Okay.
Then you begin to question whether you are indeed free and whether you are safe with what you're doing.
Well, Evans, my colleague Evans Spencer is also with us. Well, Evans, looking at what your other colleagues have been saying, I would first want to take your thoughts at least. I see that you cut across doing all the newsroom work and on radio as well. We'll come to online abuse of journalists, for instance. We are talking press freedom in general. What will be your assessment of what we have when it comes to press freedom, knowing that our rankings are falling amongst others? Where you sit? What will be your own assessment of where we are?
I think the last few years has been challenging, which is what the index has picked up on. The index that doesn't lie. This is the same index that a few years ago placed us as number one on the continent. And I remember that particular year, Ghana was chosen to host the World Press Freedom Day, which was a validation of the work that is and the media journalists work. So if down the line we've seen this consistent decline, it just goes to show that something definitely has gone wrong over the period. And the evidence for me is there for everybody to see. We've seen this use of this false publication law, which I think is a very troubling one. Very often, a law that I honestly didn't know it existed until very recently, but has been used quite aggressively. That for me is subject to abuse, and in some of the instances potentially have been abused as well. Then we've seen physical assault of journalists, which we haven't seen closure to. The Latif case is an example, so rumbling on. And then for me, the big one, it is this self-censorship that all of us have begun now to endure or to place on ourselves because of the fear of the unseen hand sometimes, or the overly then begin to pile all this unnecessary.
It looks like we have a bad connection to you, Evans. If you could reposition yourself, can you hear me?
On you, so colleagues are beginning to self-censor as a result of that. Yes, I can.
Okay, you can complete
that.
Hear me? We lost you briefly, but you're back on.
Okay, I don't know if you can.
You're on self-censorship. Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. So for me, that's for me the biggest tragedy of all, when journalists, in doing their work, now beginning to self-censor.
Oh dear. Okay, that does appear that we have a bad connection to you, Evans, but we'll come back again. Let me take the views of Martha on this as well. She's been giving me a general overview in terms of what the media status is, but looking at this University of Ghana report, the State of the Media report that came, We Are Women, the online abuse of journalists came up strongly. We'll talk about poor remuneration and the other issues that came. Something has touched on the security agencies and being the ones that are perpetrating these violence on journalists. But as women, as an editor, and I'm sure you have women under you working amongst others, let's talk about online abuse of journalists in general and looking at the huge ratio when we talk about women enduring this kind of, abuse when it comes to the line of your work. What would you say about it?
Thank you, Emefa. In this, in the line of our work, when it's a woman and the story is even valid, people start with the fact that you're a woman, and so you may not merit that, should I say, support that a man should get. And so after all the difficulties that you may have gone through in getting the report, because first you're a woman, you still have to come and justify why your story is a good story to the rest of the public. So when it happens that way, you are now going to double check, triple check, do everything. You come out and nobody seems to want to give you that validation that you can do it right just because you're a woman. Mm-hmm. Now, these online attacks happen very often now. So your story is right, but people will start attacking you from online, who you are, start bringing issues in, other things that are away from the story, or some background somewhere that is not even linked to the story. And when they start doing that, you look at yourself. If you don't have a strong bone to be able to stand it, you will, in fact, you collapse. And then you withdraw the story. Yeah. And that in itself does not augur well for us, because if a woman is able to go through the process and get the story, I don't think it is right for the woman to be questioned again, more than a man will be questioned, or a woman should be abused just because she is a woman. Mm-hmm. And when these things happen, it makes us feel we don't belong here. Not because we are not capable, not because we don't know what we are about, not because we got something wrong, but because someone thinks you're a woman and so you don't deserve the space. Now, something happened on Network Adum, and it really hurt that a woman did a story and she slipped. It's not even a slip. Like this video trending now, the BBC anchor's video. Yeah. So she didn't know she was on air. So she didn't hear the countdown, and she did something similar. Or she spoke to someone in the control room, and someone cut the video, put it on TikTok, and it went viral. And because of that, her self-confidence to even go on air again, it's not there. She has given up. Yeah. Just because it's a woman and she messed up. Because there are other men, they do that, and I don't see that trending. I don't see someone picking it and then making it go viral so that others can pick on them just because they are women. And because of that, in fact, she was asked to step aside for a while because it was troubling. Okay. For her to go on air, she wasn't sure, she wasn't comfortable. And then subsequently, somebody will say, you let me relax and see what will happen. The video may have died down, but will she be able to regain her confidence to be able to go back on air? We are doing what we have to do. And so we would like that space, that respect, that honor due our colleague men given to us so that we can also do it. It's not every woman who gets to that point and went through some channels, quote unquote, to get there. Okay. There are those who have worked, like you, like me, like the others. They proved themselves and they got there. And so if there is freedom for all of us to practice as journalists, as press men, as press women, We deserve it, and we have to get it.
Okay. Someone like Erastus, you've also had your fair share when it comes to these attacks. In some cases, we've had verbally. I don't know what has become of that particular case with Kennedy Ejapong, amongst others, and the physical assault, amongst others. Let's hear your thoughts when it comes to the abuse of journalists in your line of work, for instance, and how most of the time it goes unpunished.
Well, MFA, I can tell you about, started with my expose of military men protecting a miner in the Odahon forest. If I tell you about the harrowing story of how my driver was punched in the face 3 times by the military men in the forest, we were kept for 5 hours. And we're told we cannot move. And so I would say that we were detained unlawfully, led by the owner of the site, Donald Ntua himself, and military men, over 30 of them, fully armed. Our phones were taken, they were cleared of, even all my childhood, my small boys' pictures on my phone were cleared. All footages on my camera were cleared. And we were not allowed to move anywhere. We stayed, my driver and the drone guy had to stay in the vehicle for 5 hours. And afterwards, all we got was that we had military intelligence people coming to me, taking my statement and all that, and nothing. Recently, when I did the documentary and I featured part of it in the documentary, I had the defense minister being very angry and calling me on phone and staying on phone for a long time, asking me why I'm including something that has happened before in a current documentary. And when I asked him what has happened to the investigations, he can't tell me anything.
Okay.
And fast forward, what I had to go through when the chairman of Defense and Interior Security, Samson Kennedy Ejapong, sat on TV and asked people to beat me up. Do you know how it feels like walking around and knowing that anybody at all can attack you at any time and you don't know who is coming? And my family had to stay in a safe house for a whole month. And afterwards, I had to watch my back, even now. And the kind of people who were calling and saying, watch your back, watch your back. And I kept asking myself, from who? And so if you're not strong, and at the point in time, I had to put up a strong face and say, damn every consequences, I'll come out.
But these were matters that were reported to security agencies. Are we saying that months down the line, nothing has happened?
Well, nothing has happened. I can tell you that because I was invited by the National CID and they did virtually nothing. They took statements, they asked me some few questions, they asked me to come back. I went back with my lawyer, Samson Lardy. Nothing happened. Until date, nothing. And you see, when it happens like that, and when I watch my colleague who was beaten by the police, Latif,
yeah. And
right now he has a permanent problem, and nothing has happened to such a case, not even identifying those who did that to him. Then you get so afraid to the extent that if you're not careful, you wouldn't embark on any a daredevil venture anymore, exposing anything at all, like even doing stories about the environment, because somebody will not like it, and you wouldn't like what will happen to you afterwards.
Well, Samson, when the journalist says something that is not unpalatable to certain people, at least the Criminal Code and the Electronic Communications Act, amongst others, are activated to hound, so to speak, critical journalists. You've heard the abuse, at least most of these cases you have led, abuse of journalists, the ones online, the ones physical, amongst others. Who then is actually protecting the journalists when cases like these happen and nothing is done about it?
So if some of these things, I will be frank with you that it's a bit difficult to talk about them and to talk about them in sufficient detail because of the pendency of some of them. But the example Erastus gives you, the police wrote and invited Erastus to attend. So I accompanied him there. We gave Erastus' statement. They wrote to invite him. And since then, they have done absolutely nothing. Zero. At least they have not communicated back to Erastus, myself as his lawyer. And the problem is that they feel that the person who threatened him, the person who said he wishes he could lay hands on him and beat him up, is above the law. If this is how the police will behave, then what can you expect? Particularly for a person who threatened a journalist, exposed a journalist, and the journalist was killed eventually. So I understand, preparing Erastus for the police station, you could tell that yes, he's a brave man. But you can only be brave to a certain point. When people that are threatening you have a history, and the police pretends to deal with this matter and has done nothing so far. That's why I started by saying the developments appear to engender an environment that it's difficult for me to say there is any positive to talk about as far as those who supervise the realm are concerned. If a journalist will say something about someone and you'll be so quick to pick them up and put them before a court on criminal charges, and then someone else says something about a journalist, even where a complaint is made to you, you refuse to act. How else am I supposed to interpret that? Look, before Latif's situation, I am privy to so many of these circumstances where at a point my office became the default for the GJA to call on to go to the rescue of some of these journalists.
Yeah.
The modern journalists, what's the name again? The modern Ghana journalists, for example. We were told all sorts of stories, denied left, right, and center, that they were never brutalized in the manner that some of them have suggested, or brutalized at all. That they didn't put polythene bags, wrap their faces with polythene bags and push them into vehicles and drive them to national security and kept them beyond the period when they were supposed to be kept. Yet, when we went to court on a civil matter, in this matter, the state does not show interest in favor of the journalists.
Yeah. In
fact, the initial thing that was initiated was to prosecute the journalists. And it was such a bad attempt that the very first day we entered the courtroom, we went before a judge that is so alert to how bad some of these things can be. And she looked at the thing and told them to their face they didn't have a case. Okay. So immediately they had to withdraw, but it was a striking out of the case by the judge. Now, look at this. They sit down, settle the case, and promise to pay the journalist compensation, giving back his tools that were taken from him, his phones and mobile phones and all of that.
Okay.
But when the matter came up in the public, you remember the spirited defense.
That was put up.
All the justification. These things, they go on. And what do people in authority say? Caleb Kuda's case is an example. Mm-hmm. The media had to come together to fight that. If nothing was done about it, they would continue to, hammer that issue. Then the National Security Ministry quickly did something by coming out to say the soldier who was involved had been, shipped to another place, and so on and so forth.
Been transferred.
It didn't take long. We realized that soldier was going to enjoy even some goodies in a certain rank in the military.
Yeah.
So you don't see enough in respect of sanctions and actions. And that is what is leaving the terrain in such, a way that does not help. Okay. And so I am not surprised at all at the rankings.
Okay. Mr. Yeboah, well, you've heard my colleagues talk about the situation as it pertains to them. And we've seen report after report talk about security agencies being biggest violators of journalists and abuse of these journalists, amongst others. I've heard the president of the GJA talk about resisting any attempt to bring back the criminal libel and sedition laws through the back door, amongst others. Beyond these public statements that we've heard from the GJA, though, are there any background work or some specific actions that will be taking such that everybody knows that the GJA is actually doing something when it comes to these situations? Mr. Yeboah, are you there? Okay, it doesn't look like we have Mr. Yeboah still with us. But Evans, we've been talking about, examples and, typical cases of abuse of journalists. Maybe we can wrap up with you on that. I'm sure you have a take on this particular issue. I don't know if you have your fair share also of especially online abuses and the cases that are lingering. You've been touching on Latif's situation. Something has been delving deeper into that. When it comes to abuse of journalists, who really is protecting the journalists?
Right now, it appears the journalist is on his own. The police administration themselves have proven to be perpetrators themselves. They are supposed to be the first line of defense, but they themselves are perpetrators of abuse of journalists. And as we've seen in Latif's case, they've shown that they don't have an interest in protecting the journalists. So that for me is a first most important thing. So we are on our own. As far as online abuse is concerned, that is another part of this that it's growing every day. It has been for a while. And we all have had actions. We had to file a police report documenting, I did file a police report documenting the several, not abuse, death threats that I received because I was doing my job. After the 2020, people were, sending messages online telling me that they know where I live, they'll eliminate myself, my entire family. So we sent a police report out with the evidence. It's on. Nothing has come of that. I believe it's become a cold case. I doubt if the police have ever made any particular, because I wasn't called after that report was filed. So clearly, we are on our own. And the only way, and before we get a GJ, and the only way we can win this ourselves is to use the enormous, tremendous power that we have as journalists and media houses. We tell everybody else's story. We wage war and do campaigns for others, for other causes. But we never once have waged war and campaigned for us.
Did I lose you, Evans?
And I think that it's time for us to do that. It's time for us doing a campaign that ran a few weeks. We talk about solid. Solid is solidarity. this is a time to show that solidarity and come together and fight this war on our own behalves.
How do we then wage this war, at least as journalists? How are you hoping to do this?
Whether she's a pet mom, a plant mom, or the mom who raised you, celebrate Mother's Day this year with the gift she'll use all the time. Get up to $400 off Peloton tread, row, guide, or bike packages, and choose from accessories like our heart rate band, row mat, cycling shoes, and more. This is the perfect gift for mom to explore what gets her moving. Whether she has 5 or 20 minutes, she can choose from classes like techno rides, country walks, or an 80s row. All access membership and guide membership separate. Offer ends May 14, 2023. Excludes Peloton tread, row, bike, and bike plus basics and Peloton guide standalone. See additional terms at onepeloton.com.
A toast to our new college grad who fills us with so much joy, almost as much as when we're in our RV. Oh, the world is your oyster, kiddo, and ours too. Now that we're covered with Progressive, Dad and I can hop in our RV anytime we want. Might even splurge on a retractable awning. Ooh, look out. Sorry, what was I talking about?
Protect your loved one with an RV policy from Progressive. Take as little as 4 minutes to see what you could save at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
When the talk about ownership of media houses have come up, from this latest UG report, for instance, we know the media ownership in this country. And how are you going to wage this kind of war on the platforms owned by persons who it will not be in their interest if you wage such wars?
Thankfully,
sorry.
The latest prep, they said that a third
of
media in Ghana is owned by politicians. A small number of media houses in Ghana are still owned by private individuals who have no political affiliations.
Okay.
My argument is media houses such as independent media houses who are striving to do real journalism, they have no political influence. They should definitely start using, come together first of all, right? And do a coordinated campaign against media journalists. And I think that's the only way. The only tool we have is our platforms, our online platforms, our radio platforms, our social media platforms, and our television platforms.
Okay.
If all these media houses that are not owned by political affiliates and politicians come together and decide to speak with one voice and run a campaign and take a position that say, whoever assaults a journalist, your party or that individual and everything associated with you will be boycotted for infinity, I think people begin to listen. So imagine if somebody within the NPP, there is a
we're really interested in what Evans is saying, but
I believe we begin to see change, and that is where, and that's where it starts.
Okay. Well, but Martha, why is it the case that you journalists have difficulty in, sharing your own stories and talking about yourselves and fighting your cause? Where's the difficulty? You talk about everybody except yourselves.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I think what Evans just said can be done. I think there are times we come together and we fight for causes that are not our cause. And so when he is calling for us to come together and do this, we can. I know the fear and the reservations we have are about other media houses that are owned by politicians. But we know also that sometimes it is not because we don't work for a politician. Sometimes it affects all of us together. So recently I've had this, let me chip this in, maybe it explains it better for me, that we've had this cause to complain about the police being silent, not talking to us, only releasing statements when they want to. It's like controlling the narrative. So they tell you what to talk about. And sometimes you need answers to some key questions, even in their press statements, and you will not get it. And so we want to do something to draw their attention that this is not how you can run the media. You cannot do this to us. You cannot tell us what to talk about, how to talk about it, and when to talk about. So can we come together and black the police out for some time. And let's see if they can be the police without us. And you have others telling you, oh no, I tried. I got some response behind the scenes, so I'm okay with that one. I think we have a divided front.
Okay.
And it comes from, if Mr. Kofi Yeboah is still on, from the body that is supposed to bring us together. I don't see that zeal to want to fight this cause. Now, if you look at multimedia alone, we can fight this.
Okay.
We can do this. If you bring on board the other independent broadcasters who are not being funded by politicians, we can do this. Sometimes the fear is that when you start, no one will join.
Okay.
Then it will be a lone ranger's fight. And then you may lose it. Then every other person will come at you and say, what did you gain from it? But we will also not get anywhere if we don't start it. Okay. Sometimes others are waiting to see who will start.
Yeah.
Then they will come on board. Because, MFA, this happens to all of us. It's not just a multimedia journalist who has been assaulted. It is not just Erastus who tried to do something in Ghana. As he was speaking, I was thinking about it. And I asked myself, Erastus, what has your family told you about what you are doing?
Yeah.
Have they started telling you to stop? And so if it looks like it is Erastus' fight and not multimedia or journalists in Ghana's fight, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
Because we go on this tangent when, let's say, pensioners are fighting for their bond,
we are there.
their money and their increment and whoever, and we go in there, we fight for them.
Yeah.
And we get rewards for them. What about us?
It brings me to the issue of our remuneration as well. Remuneration, it was one of the key issues also that came up, and unfortunately, we have to be wrapping up this one. But Erastus, is this a fight that what Evans has been saying, this war that we have to wage? We waged it against Galamsey. Somewhat we are winning. Is it difficult? Is it a war that we can wage as well? You would say briefly.
Why not? We can. And it's just the same concern that Martha and Evans have been raising. We are not unified. Unified towards a common purpose.
Okay.
That is the catchphrase. If we are able to do that, we'll be the strongest ever force in Ghana to even do advocacy or even for our development.
Okay.
But unfortunately, when you start something, it becomes your own thing, and people, your colleagues see you as that. When you have a problem, it's your problem. It's not our problem. If we stop doing that and we come together as one force, why not? We can move mountains.
Okay. Thankfully, we have a former GJ, Journalist of the Year with us. Samson, I'll give you the final word on this. Concerns about journalists not being able to speak for themselves, and then also issues about remuneration amongst others. Maybe you can box all together and give us a final take on this. Samson, can you hear me?
To me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, right. So I believe that my colleagues have stated it rightly. You don't have to wait for anybody. You can start in your own small way. Once it is a right course you are taking, you will get the needed support and you will gather the needed gravitas to grab the attention that you require. I have just recently been doing a series on, police and military and how they abuse the gun and the uniform against ordinary citizens when they are supposed to do otherwise. And there's someone, even a military officer, who has been put in the guard room for about 6 months now, and without a charge, and the laws have been breached against him. I got the military high command called me. We sat down. I pointed out what was wrong. They told me their side of the story, made the needed admissions about Ashaiman. They made the needed admissions and made certain assurances what they can do. Once we come together, we will make an impact. And I like what Martha was saying about the police. they must be accountable to the people. So they cannot say they issue a statement and they will not explain anything. And even that statement, it is at their whim what it is that they will issue a statement about. It's not good enough. We can come together. It can take just one media, 2, 3, 4 media houses coming together collectively under the GJA. If it will not, you can do it on your own and say, we will black you out. It will work. And we need to do these things. Media owners, as far as salaries, remuneration, and so on are concerned, of course, a lot has to be done. And I believe that everybody is taking the State of the Ghanaian Media report by the University of Ghana very seriously. If you're a media owner, you don't have a copy on your desk, and you are not reading it, I don't take you serious. Okay, Samson, thank you so much for joining us. That's Samson Lardy, former GJA Journalist of the Year. We also had Kofi Yeboah, unfortunately couldn't stay with us. He's the GJA General Secretary. We also had Martha Crenshaw Aqua, editor at Doom News. We also had Evans Mensah, head of our political desk and an editor as well. Many thanks for your company. And I also had Erastus Asare Donko. For our radio audience, we have A Walk with Jesus. Prime Take is up next for our TV audience. I am MFA Apau. Another edition of the probe comes your way same time. Have a good evening.